Chapter 4. When the summer was over, I started at Parham Elementary. I was the new kid on the block, and nobody liked me. The kids teased me every day, and it seemed like it would never end. Home wasn't much better. Every day I was burdened down with chores and responsibilities. I didn't know where my mother was, and no one was talking about her or her condition. I was wondering if she had died, or would I ever see her again? I was confused. I was so lonely. I was afraid. I was little. I didn't know what to tell my brother when he would look up at me and say, "Where's Mama? Terry, where is Mama?" I didn't know what to tell him. So I would make stuff up like, "She went to the store and she'll be shopping for a while," or "She's on vacation." I just didn't know what to say. As time went by, I started having headaches every day around the same time. I went to my grandmother and she took me to the doctor, and he couldn't find anything wrong. I finally asked my grandmother where my mother was, and she replied, "Your mother is sick and could be in the hospital for a very long time." "Can I go see her?" I replied. "Soon you will see her." Later that evening, I sat my little brother down and told him our mother was sick. I didn't know what kind of sickness she had. That would come later. He began to cry. "I don't want her to be sick. When is she getting out of the hospital?" "I don't know. Soon, I hope." Later finally came when we were to go visit Mother. I remember going to the hospital and sitting in this room. My grandmother was talking to this lady behind a big glass window. All of a sudden, I heard this buzzing sound, and my grandmother took my hand, and we walked through this big metal door that opened on its own. We walked to this huge room that had tables, chairs, some games, and a TV. There were people in the room smoking cigarettes and playing cards. A few minutes later, my mom came in the room. She came and sat next to me and didn't say anything. She had a look on her face as if she didn't know who I was. "Hi, Mama. How are you?" I said slowly and frightened, unsure of what to say. "Hi," she said with no emotion or facial expressions. Most of the visit was silent. As I began to look around, there were people talking to themselves and screaming at the nurses, and I heard someone say that the nurses were trying to poison them. At that very moment, I knew my mother was mentally ill. I began to understand what my grandmother meant by sick. This was a different kind of sickness. This was a life altering sickness, a sickness that had no cure. Mother eventually said a few words that made no sense to me, and I knew from her tone of voice that she was not herself. My world as I knew it would no longer be the same. Thoughts began running through my mind. No one must know about this. People would be cruel and possibly say things like, "Your mother is crazy." And this sent me into a frenzy. At all costs, my friends must not know. I would be the talk of the school. The kids would laugh at me. All those thoughts were ringing in my head. What was I going to do about this? It was then that I began to understand that my mother was crazy, which was the term used in those days. But what she really was manifested itself in the form of a doctor's diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia. Mother stayed in the hospital for about a year, it seemed, and then she came to live with us at Granny's house. I thought that I was living in a nightmare before the gambling and the hunger. That was nothing compared to what would happen in days, months, and years to come. In the meantime, my father had come to live with us after they released him from the hospital. and he wasn't himself either. These two wonderful people, whom I called mom and dad, were complete strangers to me. What happened to them? Who did this? Are they ever going to be them again? Time would tell it all. Mother came and got settled in. She stayed in her room for the first 3 days. When she finally surfaced, I brought her the baby, and she rejected him. Who is this little man? I don't know him. Get him away from me. The baby started crying because he was afraid of her. The little men are out to get me. Can't you see them? Don't you hear them? She said. I took my little brother into the living room to watch TV. A few minutes later, Mother was walking through the house looking up at the ceiling saying things like, I hear you. You can't have my soul. Listen, can you hear them? They are on top of the roof. They're telling me to come outside. And God doesn't love me. Make them stop, she screamed. My grandmother heard her scream and came downstairs. What's the matter, Red? What happened? She stopped talking and resumed that blank stare that consumed a great part of her. Come on, Red. Let's sit down. Tell me what happened. Again, complete silence fell in the room as Mother said nothing. She began walking slowly toward the stairs. One by one, she went up and vanished into her room. The baby was crying, and my mind was wondering, what just happened? Why was she talking that way? You see, I really did not understand the fullness of having schizophrenia, nor did I understand the torment of a person's mind. A couple of days later,